warm up as well. But look at SkyTower radar this morning. If you're watching at noon today, I talked about this. You already know the answer, but look at this. It looks like this is just this circle, just kind of emanating out of the coastline of Citrus County. And I asked Linda, do you know what this is? Is this a circular rain shower? Is this an alien spaceship taking off some dust? What is this? Well, take a good look at that. We'll talk more about that coming up in a little bit. Give you a little time to think about it. Don't look it up. Just take your guess what you think that might be. So we'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. But another thing pretty interesting is yesterday was actually our first day so far this month. And I know we're still early on in the month, but yesterday was our first day that we actually saw an above average temperature so far this month, because we had that rain last week. We had somewhat of a wet weekend, our 4th of July weekend for us, and so that helped to cool things down. So we had a lot of below average temperatures. Not that it was cold, but it was below that average of 91 degrees. Then on Tuesday, we were back to average. Yesterday was the first time we actually saw an above average temperature so far this month. And guess what? We're going to basically stay at that above average number, for the foreseeable future, because there's plenty of heat around. 91 degrees right now here in Tampa, so already we're right at that average. 94 in West. County into Highlands County as well, in and around and maybe just to the south of Sebring. Put this into motion, and the thing that you're going to notice with this is these storms aren't really moving all that much. They're just raining themselves out in that one spot. So they pop up and then they rain, and so you can pick up quite a bit of rain in really a short period of time, because some of these are really intense right now. This is looking down towards Sebring. You've got US 27 that goes right through Sebring, pushing to the south of there. So where 98 and 27 come together down towards DeSoto City, and DeSoto City Road moving through there. Here you've got Skipper Road as well. And just to the north of there, that's where we have the most intense portion of this right now. You put on that lightning counter, and just in this one spot right here, we're looking at 219 strokes of lightning. So this is a pretty intense cell sitting in this one spot. Let's go out a little wider here, see what else we've got going on. You look down even further to the south, down towards Lake Placid, and then pushing to the north and east of Arcadia, we've got some storms. Now, as we slide all the way over towards Sarasota County, this is extreme southeastern Sarasota County. Have this one cell that's starting to pop up down towards Northport, just on the south side of I-75. And just like what we've seen over, or with these other cells, they're not moving all that much. You see how it just somewhat developed right in this one spot, and just continues to rain in this one spot. Not a whole lot of development right in this particular area. I do see there's some subdivisions in there, but there's definitely more of these storms that are going to be popping up as we head through the rest of the afternoon. But other than that, really not much going on along the entire west coast of Florida. You do see, as you look down to the south, down towards Cape Coral, and some of these southern areas, there are more storms developing down towards the Everglades, down across Alligator Alley as well. Remember, we've been talking about this for several days. We've got this big ridge that's extending over the state. So this is somewhat on the edge of that ridge, and also as you look to the north, we've been seeing this over the past several days. A lot of storms developing up across North Florida, and so we're seeing that again today with some of the storms. But right in the middle, you can see somewhat of a dry patch where we just don't see as many of those storms around. So we will continue to watch SkyTower radar and check in as we go through the next, say, 20 minutes or so. But here's the Fox model showing as we go through the rest of the afternoon. We continue to see some of these storms popping up, but notice most of the storms are going to continue to be well inland. That's going to be those favored locations as we go through the afternoon. Things will wind down tonight. We'll see a quiet night. Tomorrow looks nice, mostly sunny to partly cloudy skies. As we head through the afternoon, we are starting to see this ridge weaken somewhat, which is going to allow a few more storms as we head into tomorrow. But still, most of the favored locations will tend to be away from the coastline. Also notice you're seeing some of this down to our south as well. South of Sarasota down towards Fort Myers. So South Florida, still a favored location to see a lot of these storms as we head through the day tomorrow. Although you're seeing signs that maybe some of these storms try and work their way back towards the coastline as we head into tomorrow evening. Then even a better chance of more of these storms popping up all across the area as we head into Saturday. So rainfall for today, you see that accumulation mainly away from the coastline. The coast stays dry for today, and then as we head into the weekend, you're starting to see that progression of some of this pushing back closer to the coast. That's what you're seeing right through here, where we're finally starting to see at least some accumulation close to the coastline. Other than that, here's that ridge. That high pressure sitting right over the central Gulf, and that's extending over the state, and that's what has somewhat suppressed a lot of the activity over Central Florida. Of course, it's July, so you're not going to get rid of the rain completely. It's really hard to do that, but it has been lower than what you would typically expect to see in July. Now, you look to the north, a lot of activity. In fact, up into places like Washington, D.C. yesterday, big rains working their way through there yesterday, caused some flooding, and there's still plenty of moisture across much of the Appalachians, down across the eastern seaboard, through Georgia as well. Atlanta seeing some big storms rolling through there as well. But 7-day forecast for us just continues to show more and more of these storms working their way through and basically increasing that rain chance as we head into the weekend and heading into next week. You see that rain chance heading up to about 50 to 60%. So we were talking about this right as we came on, this ring developing this morning up towards Homosassa Springs, right along the coastline. What do you think this is? Well, this is what's called a roost ring, and this is actually birds. Right at sunrise, you get a lot of the birds. They've all been roosting and nesting all night long, and they are flying off for the day. SkyTower radar, so it's sensitive that it's actually picking up all these birds. There are thousands of birds taking off and basically heading out for the day, and that is exactly what you're looking at on SkyTower radar. Pretty interesting view. We've seen this over the past couple of mornings. May even see this again tomorrow. We'll watch and see. So we're talking tropics coming up in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back to SkyTower Weather. Now looking at the numbers, Colorado State came out with their numbers here, and that's actually not the list that we wanted here, but we'll flip over here and we'll look at this list. This is looking at Colorado State compared to NOAA, and Colorado State came out yesterday and updated their numbers, and what they actually did is they lowered that number by 1. Originally they had 17, 9, and 4. They dropped that by 1, which it's good news. If we've got fewer storms to worry about, that's fewer chances to be affected by a storm. You prepare regardless. But you can see it's somewhat coming more in line with what NOAA is forecasting. Of course, they put out their forecast at the very beginning of the season, where they had that 13 to 19, 6 to 10, and 3 to 5 major hurricanes. A big part of this, what Colorado State is noticing, is just a large amounts of wind shear that continue across the Caribbean that look like they're going to persist a little bit longer as well. So that will tend to drop those numbers a little bit, but still, we're not going into El Nino. Looks like we're more of a neutral, so still expecting a slightly above average season. Of course, it doesn't matter whether it's above average, below average, you prepare the same regardless of what those numbers say. It's just, at least gives us a little bit of hope. If we've got fewer storms, I like to compare this to darts. If we have fewer darts to throw, it's fewer chances that you have of getting that bullseye, which is us. So we've used these names so far, 3 names down. Dexter, next name on the list, although we are running, as far as climatology would suggest, we're running above or ahead of schedule, I should say, because that C name, remember Chantal, that was our C name. Typically, the average date that we see that by is August 3rd, and we've already seen that storm come and go. So we're actually, even though it seems like somewhat of a quiet start to the season, we're actually, technically, we're running ahead of schedule with that. So we'll have to wait and see when we get that next storm. Still seeing that large amount of wind shear circle the area we're talking about, down across the Caribbean, right through here. You can see those the greens and the yellows in there. That is that stronger wind shear in the atmosphere. And tropical systems, developing tropical systems, they don't like to see strong winds. That disrupts their circulation, doesn't allow them to really get organized. And so it does look like this will at least continue to be down across the Caribbean, at least for the next several days. And still, in some respects, we will be dealing with wind shear across portions of the Atlantic. As we head towards the end of July, heading into August, that's when quite often we start to see a lot of that wind shear starting to subside. The other thing that we start to see subsiding is a lot of that dry Saharan dust. And here's yet another plume that's working its way across the Atlantic. At least for now, Hurricane Center putting that no tropical formation expected over the next 7 days. Always that term or that phrase we like to hear. But watch that big plume continues to work its way across the Caribbean, working its way. And I do think as we head into this weekend, at least portions of South Florida may be seeing some of that dust as well. Then it works its way over the Yucatan, maybe down into the southern Gulf as we head into about the middle of next week. But watch this. Pretty interesting to watch this. Here we're looking at the Fox model. Everything's very quiet. You see that dust working its way from the west, from the east rather, pushing towards the west. Looks like yet another plume coming off the coastline. But if you look real closely, and I'm going to circle some of these areas right here, and what we're starting to see is more of these tropical waves. If you watch that animation, you would have seen more of these tropical waves starting to develop. Now, it's still very limited activity with this one as we go towards about Tuesday of next week. But I think we're starting to get to that point where we're going to have to start to pay attention to some of these tropical waves working their way across the Atlantic. Gets into that little area, maybe some lower wind shear, gets away from some of that dry air, and we may see one of these trying to develop a little bit more. Have to wait and see how this plays out as we go through the next couple of weeks, really. But at least that tropical cyclone outlook all the way through about the July 22nd. That's the date on this. Still showing large amounts of dry air working its way through a good portion of the Caribbean and pushing over into Mexico as well. But the other thing that you notice with this is this shade right here. Now it's low, but now highlighting an area across the central and eastern Gulf that at least conditions look like they're at least a little more conducive, that we could see some development. That's why that area is highlighted. We're not seeing any of the major computer models indicating any real development in this area, but it's an area that is just highlighted because conditions are at least more conducive that something could form in this area. So that's why you see that low chance on there. And we're going to watch this really closely because that's about the only area that we've got going on right now. Looking at just at that tropical activity. Of course, we always talk about this, that peak of the hurricane season, September 10th. So we are still early on in the season. In fact, as you look through July, you see the areas that we're watching. It's across the Gulf, the Western Atlantic, down into the Caribbean. But notice this. Once we go from July to August, how much more area opens up as far as where we typically see development of systems. So things really start to ramp up as we head into August, heading towards that peak of the season through September, September 10th being the peak. That's when you really start to get an idea what kind of a season you are going to have once that comes along. So coming up in just a minute here, we'll take another look at SkyTower radar, see how those storms are developing out there. Much more coming up in just a couple of minutes. Welcome back to SkyTower Weather now, looking over Washington, D.C. They had a lot of storms yesterday, and you still have some of the overcast skies. Things look like they're quiet there for the moment, but there are more storms working their way across the mid-Atlantic states, back towards the Appalachians, down into Georgia as well. Georgia, a very active spot this afternoon with the storms working their way through. Look at this. This is from yesterday. And after the heavy rains working their way through, water just, looks like rivers going down some of the streets in D.C. Big thunderstorms rolling through there. Quite a bit of rain, short period of time. The drains just couldn't handle all this. Just what a mess right there in Washington, D.C. Loads of tropical moisture have streamed up across the mid-Atlantic states. A lot of this leftover moisture from Chantal still causing havoc in some of these areas. up in that direction. We have a flood watch still across North Carolina up into Virginia. That goes through Thursday evening, this evening. Of course, any additional rain on top of this is going to aggravate that situation. And there's still that possibility of some really locally heavy rains causing more flash flooding in some of these areas. You see it highlighted all the way down through Georgia, but really through the Carolinas up into Virginia, really heading up towards Delaware as well, where you just continue to see this area where it's gotten hit pretty hard over the past several days. We've all seen the videos coming out of North Carolina with the flooding up in that area. Some pretty extensive flooding from some of the rains that came through with Tropical Storm Chantal, which is always that thing that we talk about. You don't need a major hurricane to cause some real heartache. And we're seeing this. This was really a fairly minimal tropical storm that worked its way through. And there you see all the rain right now working its way through Georgia. Look at all the rain that Georgia, central and southern Georgia right now, getting clobbered with all the storms. And these are slowly working their way on towards that northeasterly direction. And so up towards, say, South Carolina, up into North Carolina, more storms spreading up in that direction as we go through the afternoon heading into this evening. Here it is on the Fox model showing just more of those storms migrating very slowly on towards the east. So South Carolina, up in the North Carolina, right along the coastline, getting quite a bit of rain as we head through the rest of the day. So let's check on SkyTower radar, see how things are doing right now. And still, you notice the coastlines are quiet. Those big storms down into Highlands County. We'll zoom in, see how these are doing, and we put it into motion. And you do see some of these are starting to rain themselves out, but what happens, you get some of these outflow boundaries, and you just see some of these storms starting to migrate a little bit, but still very slow moving storms. So slow moving storms equates to lots of rain in one spot. Then over along the Florida Turnpike, this is over to Osceola County, a really intense storm right now going on in this one area. Look at the lightning with that. You're talking right now, let's stop this so we can see that number on there, 661 strokes of lightning just in this view. That's a really intense storm. And then as we head to the north, up towards Ocala, starting to see, well, one little cell there popping up just over Ocala. And we'll see where this is moving to. It does look like it's sliding on towards the east, moved right over I-75. So as we continue throughout the rest of the afternoon, likely going to see more of these storms developing, but that favored location will be more of those inland spots. Here's the 7-day forecast, because as we head into the weekend, we are going to see those rain chances heading up as that ridge starts to break down, move away a little bit, enough to allow a better chance of those storms as we head into the weekend. That's all the time that we have for today. We'll be back at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Enjoy your day.